Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight to the inaugural meeting of Loudoun Climate Project. We formed this organization when two local environmental groups, Sustainable Loudoun and 350 Loudoun, combined forces and merged. And now we're dedicated to educating and activating the community in order to make a difference locally in climate change. We appreciate you taking an interest and hope you'll join us as we tackle one of the biggest issues facing our community, our country, and the world. Tonight, we're asking that you mute yourself while we go through the program because we're going to be recording it. So if you don't want to be on the recording, stop your video. And we've got a full evening ahead of us. We're going to go through a quick history of 350 Loudoun and Sustainable Loudoun, and then talk about the vision for Loudoun Climate Project. And we'll talk a little bit about membership as well. And then we've got a couple of special guests. We've got Mike Tidwell from the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, and we've got our guest speaker for our first in a series of climate talks, Sam Rasoul, who will talk about the Green New Deal in Virginia. And then we're going to field questions, which we'll do in the Q&A section. If you're familiar with Zoom, there's a little chat area where you can jot down a question, and we'll get to that at the end of the program and get to as many of them as we can. And again, thank you for coming. And I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leader, Natalie Pian. Take it away, Natalie.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Next slide, please. Before I begin, though, please take a moment to think about this question. What brought you here tonight? Just think about it for a moment. Okay, I'm going to share my answer. My concern for the environment started decades ago when I read Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in high school. It stayed with me ever since, but it wasn't until 2013 that I became a climate activist and helped found 350 Loudoun. I'm here today for my 2 adult daughters and my 1,000 plus middle school science students, all of whom need a livable planet to thrive, not struggle to survive. Next. Here's a bit of 350 Loudoun's history. We used every available avenue to educate people about climate change, including at Loudoun fairs with family-friendly craft activities for children and information petitions for adults. Next. Marching in parades in Leesburg, each with a different climate message. Sometimes made and displayed banners over Route 7 to remind commuters that climate change is an urgent issue. Next. Twice, we organized the Loudoun County Solar Home Tour for solar home owners to share their stories and answer questions. Being a fun-loving group, afterwards, we gathered at Sunset Hills Winery, a 100% solar energy powered operation. Next. Sometimes we go to downtown Leesburg to hold rallies and talk climate, host vigils in solidarity with victims of devastating weather events like Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, or pray for the earth when Trump was inaugurated. Next. For many years, 350 Loudoun hosted events in Loudoun that were part of events held across the state and even across the nation, such as Hands Across the Appalachian Trail at Bear's Den, Hands Across the Land at Riverbend Park, and McAuliffe Do the Right Thing right here in Leesburg. Next. We support protests and actions in Washington, D.C. and Richmond, the People's Climate March in Washington, the anti-Keystone XL Pipeline Cowboy and Indian Alliance March, a die-in and a protest in Richmond, protests at the Supreme Court hearing the Atlantic Coast Pipeline appeal. Next. We even captained a bus to New York City for the historic 400,000 strong 2013 climate People's Climate March. Next. And we take deep dives into critical climate issues in Virginia, fracked gas pipelines. We bring folks from Northern Virginia to Central Virginia to meet the impacted environmental justice Union Hill community, to observe destruction of Virginia's upland resources and wetlands, to witness tree sitters 870 plus days blockade of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. 350 Loudoun helped put faraway pipelines on the radar of Northern Virginia climate activists. Next. When the current Virginia administration ignored these frontline communities, 350 Loudoun helped organize the Leesburg component of the Virginians for Justice two-day, two-location event. In Leesburg, we appealed to Attorney General Mark Herring for his attention. Thankfully, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline Project was canceled on July 5th, 2020. The Mountain Valley Pipeline Project, however, is still alive, but in its death throes. Next. Finally, 350 Loudoun collaborates with others to amplify mutual messages. Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, Moms Clean Air Force, and the Green New Deal Coalition. That was a whirlwind history of 350 Loudoun. Now I'll pass the mic to Tony Norpel to share Sustainable Loudoun's history.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. Next slide. So I founded Sustainable Loudoun in 2005, recognizing three hard problems: environmental degradation, including climate change. The mass of all wild mammals on Earth is 17% of what it used to be before we discovered agriculture, and collapsing rapidly, leading to what experts are calling the sixth mass extinction. In fact, the rate of extinction in the last 500 years is more than 100 times the rate of extinction during the entire Cenozoic. This is mostly due to habitat destruction and degradation. The mass of all human stuff, next slide, now exceeds the total dry mass of all life on Earth, from bacteria to sperm whales. And our stuff is doubling every 20 years. Energy, at the end of 2019, most of our energy was derived from fossil fuels, with only 2% coming from nuclear power and 1.5% coming from solar and wind combined. It remains a daunting task to replace all the energy along with its infrastructure with alternatives. Next slide. Economics, including wealth and power inequality. The wealthy in America own 30% of all wealth, as much as the poorest 94% of the population, and 38% of our poorest have no aggregate wealth at all. And since March 18th last year, the beginning of the lockdowns, until December 8th, the 461 billionaires in our country extracted over $1 trillion from the economy. This is during a recession. Next slide. My purpose was to educate myself and others about these problems and advocate for solutions. With this goal, we hosted more than 100 talks by various experts in solar energy, geothermal, climate, biology, history, geography, economics, and many other topics. At George Washington University, every fall, we hosted Don Sandros' Memorial Lecture Series. Don was one of the first solar installers in Loudoun County, and in fact installed the solar on my property. Around this time, Andrea Majimsi was elected to the Board of Supervisors, and she spearheaded some of the most remarkable changes to government priorities, including the publication of the county's energy strategy in 2009. Together with Majimsi, Sustainable Loudoun hosted what we call green beer meetings, which brought together business owners and interested public to discuss the various sustainable strategies and ways to make businesses greener. We did not drink green beer. This led to the establishment of the Green Business Challenge, whereby local businesses were rewarded for implementing energy savings and environmental solutions towards creating a healthier environment for our county. And more recently, the formation of Virginia Green Initiative, an organization of businesses which began in Loudoun County, but is now expanding over the entire state. Rahal and Sustainable Loudoun have sponsored scholarship awards at Loudoun County Regional Science and Engineering Fair for high school students. And we have been doing this for about 10 years. And Our members also participated in lobby days in Richmond each year to advocate and promote responsible environmental and energy legislation. And we have periodically spoken at county board meetings about topics of concern. And in fact, next slide, we encourage the board to issue a proclamation to recognize Loudoun County Public Schools for Science and Engineering Fair and the promotion of science, education, and research within Loudoun County on April 22nd, 2017. And Natalie will now talk about the new organization, Loudoun Climate Project.
Thank you, Tony. So let me tell you a few things about the new Loudoun Climate Project. The Loudoun Climate Project has two objectives. We support scientifically informed activism and advocacy to increase understanding of climate change to influence personal choices and public policy. We promote the development of resilient economy based on environmental stewardship, energy conservation, and the transition to renewable energy. Next. Loudoun Climate Project has its first set of officers. I am the inaugural president. We have bylaws. We are nonpartisan. We will be nonprofit. We will focus locally. So all we need is you. There are many opportunities in new organizations. Everyone is an expert at something and can contribute. Creative solutions come from new connections. Now I'll pass the mic to Chris Tandy, Loudoun Climate Project's inaugural vice president, to share what his vision of the future is.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you for everyone for being here. Loudoun County needs an effective climate group. We're too big and too influential of the county not to have one. Separately, 350 Loudoun and Sustainable Loudoun have been effective in their own ways, but have been limited by a few factors that the merger is intended to address. Under one roof and sharing resources, Loudoun Climate Project will be able to streamline its operation and hopefully be more able to get more done than the sum of the two prior organizations. The plan is to take the activism side from 350 Loudoun and the educational side from Sustainable Loudoun and put both under the one organization, but as a 501c3 designated nonprofit. We'll build a larger mailing list, more diversified funding sources, and with that, we'll keep building for the future. So we'll strengthen our relationships with other advocacy groups, become a familiar entity at both the County Board of Supervisors and the legislature. With diversified and increased funding, we'll be better able to plan larger projects. In previous years, we've bused folks to Frontlines pipeline communities in Virginia and DC, and to DC and New York and Richmond for protests. And as many of us know, busing is expensive. Where our budgets previously covered art builds, transportation costs, and maybe some t-shirts, hopefully we'll be able to afford some more ambitious projects like setting up an air quality monitoring network. We're also hoping to go really big on Earth Day. We're trying to build a Big Tent organization that everyone can get involved with. It's important to us that Loudoun Climate Project be intersectional, show up for social justice, and represent the needs that Loudoun has as well as Virginia. So we're looking to build robust partnerships with other organizations working on a variety of local issues. We mean you and your organizations. Let's work together toward a brighter, more sustainable future for Loudoun and beyond. Before I pass it to Mackenzie for the membership, I'm just going to show you a couple quick things on the website. This is the Join Us button that takes you to a contact form that puts you in our mailing list. And then the other thing is the events calendar. This is a Google-based calendar. If you click this little add to Google Calendar thing and you use Google Calendar, it'll bring our events straight into your events, into your calendar. Now we go to Mackenzie for membership.
Thanks, Chris. So good evening, everyone. I just want to say thanks again for being here tonight. I am the newest member of the Loudoun Climate Project. I'm really excited to be here. Since I can remember, I've always been a member of some sort of environmental group that's hopefully had some sort of influence. I was even in ecology club in middle school, where Mrs. Pien, or Natalie as you see her here, was my middle school science teacher. So she can tell you I've been into this stuff since then, at least. So like I said, I've always been a member of something environmental. In college, I was a member of Greenpeace, and I helped with direct action. It's a picture you can see here on the slide. I was an environmental sciences major, so I'm just really excited to hopefully be able to be in this group. I'm also originally from the Loudoun County area. I moved away for a little bit, but now that I'm back, I really wanted to be involved with something that I think can have a big impact, especially on the community that I'm a part of. And after hearing everything that both Sustainable Loudoun and 350 Loudoun have done apart, I'm sure that being a member of this group in a cohesive unit will be able to produce change like we haven't really been able to see before. Because as Chris mentioned, we're too big and too influential to really not have a group like this. It's a really good way to be involved so you can act locally for a really global cause and, like I said, affect change in the community. And I know I don't have kids yet, and I'm recently married, so I really want to make sure that my kids' future is going to be very bright and that they're going to have all the abundance that they can in this world. So being a member, like I said, of something like this affords me that opportunity to make sure I can make an impact. And we really hope that you'll also want to be members of this group and that you'll help us make an impact also. And that's all I've got. But thanks again for being here tonight.
Okay. I have the great pleasure of introducing Mike Tidwell. He's a friend from one of our longtime partner organizations. Mike's the director of Chesapeake Climate Action Network, an organization that 350.org founder Bill McKibben calls the world's best regional climate group. We've worked with CCAN on all sorts of projects over the years. My personal favorite was when we helped organize the Woodbridge location for 3 days of lunchtime protest at every single DEQ office that turned into 2 days because of a hurricane. Mike, it's great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Chris and Amanda and Natalie and Tony and everybody else. You know, I've watched and admired Sustainable Loudoun for a long time and 350 Loudoun. And I want to say, as someone who directs a regional climate group active in Maryland, Virginia, and DC, there are 2 counties who stand out in this region as just climate activist models. I don't know what's in the water in Howard County, Maryland, but they have an incredible group called HOCO Climate. And they've been at it for 15 years, and they're always there, and they're always at protests and always active, and they're amazing. They inspire everyone in Maryland. Everyone tries to keep up with the Howard County climate hawks and everything they do. And in Virginia, honestly, it's Loudoun County. I mean, you guys stand out. You're the most organized, sustained, committed, creative, hardworking community of climate activists and volunteers in all of Virginia, in my view. I mean, there's some great activists in Richmond and along the pipeline routes and in Hampton Roads, but the durability, the inspiration of the friendships that I've made, the results that you guys get really stand out. So I think it's amazing that you're joining forces and creating the Loudoun Climate Project. And you guys make me think of Greta Thunberg, who, of all the amazing things she said and done, she has a quote where she says, if you want to be hopeful on climate change, and it can be hard, we know, it can be really tough to be hopeful on climate change, but if you want to be hopeful and have hope about climate change, take action. When you take action, you feel better. After this call tonight, we're all going to feel better because we're together, we're taking action, and therefore we're going to have more hope. And you guys give me hope, you inspire me, and I look forward to working with you guys till we completely decarbonize the Virginia economy and the economy worldwide. So thank you so much.
You're on mute, Natalie.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Next slide, please. Okay, I take great pleasure in introducing Delegate Sam Rasoul. Now, regrettably, he's running a little bit late, so I'm going to go through my regular introduction and then do some slides for him. Okay, so I'm going to go back to introducing Sam. Okay, while Sam represents Virginia's 11th House of Delegates district in Central Virginia, including Roanoke, he is no stranger to Northern Virginia. Here he is in Sterling, Virginia's Twin Pansy Brewery at an event called Stand with Red. It was held to express solidarity and thanks for Red Terry's tree sit to stop the Atlantic Coast Pipeline crossing her property. Sam relentlessly stands up for the welfare and best interests of Virginians. He is not your standard politician. Tonight, he will tell us about the Green New Deal Act, HB 1937, and I'm going to go ahead and give this a start until Sam can join us. Okay, so next slide, please. Oh, shucks.
Is that not the slide you want, Natalie?
No, it is, but this one doesn't have my notes with it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll just kind of try to look at the slide. So there, the Green New Deal Act 2021 is an omnibus bill. It addresses many priorities, such as a 2022 fossil fuel moratorium, a 2036, a 100% renewable energy grid, and that timeline is much more in alignment with the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This Green New Deal Act will create thousands of jobs, and it will have protections to ensure fossil fuel workers and the environmental justice communities are not left behind. It will provide transition assistance to fossil fuel workers in the way of early retirement for those who are nearing retirement, job training, not at community college on your own dime, but in apprenticeship programs. And it will provide scholarship. So there's also strong ratepayer protections to prevent high energy bills from transitioning to from the transition to renewables. So the Green New Deal Act 2021 really puts people first. That's at the center of all the different policies that is embraced. Next slide. So there's two standalone bills that's also in the Green New Deal 2021 Act that's supported by the by the Green New Deal Coalition. First is Delegate Joshua Cole's fossil fuel moratorium. And that's standalone because we identify that as essential and that we definitely want that passed independent of the Green New Deal Act. And what's unique about the fossil fuel moratorium is that not only does it call for no new fossil fuel projects, it also calls for transition assistance as well as impacted community assistance. So again, it's people-centered. The other bill that's really critical to making the transition to clean renewables is Delegate Lee Carter's HB 1755, Repeal Right to Work. And though the name is a little bit confusing, right to work actually is very harmful to workers in that right to work really puts a lid on unions. The union membership has gone down greatly. In states where, in right to work states, the average income is quite a bit lower than in non-right to work states, like to the tune of like 12%, which is several $1,000s annually. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes, so I can't remember the exact statistics, but it's huge. And what happens is, since Virginia is a right to work state, we don't have strong unions. Jobs are often low bid, like corporations love to do business in Virginia because it's going to be cheaper for them, because they don't have to pay their workers working living wages or union wages. So what happens then is that the workers, what do they call it? Wage theft. So there could be jobs in the renewable industry, but what's the first thing to be cut? It's going to be the wage, so that whoever's bidding on a project can come in at a low bid, but at the expense of workers' wages. So that's called wage theft. Okay, next. Oh. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so there was a call to action that went out today from the Green New Deal Coalition and also the Sunrise Movement. And it has to do with HB 1937, the Green New Deal Act, and the moratorium, HB 2292, that was Delegate Joshua Cole's fossil fuel moratorium. And the problem is that it's been sent to, assigned to committee, but it's not docketed. And what that means, it's not on the agenda to be discussed. Friday is crossover day. So whatever bills are not sent to the House floor, they kind of die in committee. And that's what's happened to the Green New Deal the past 2 years. So the call to action for tonight, and this will go out in the email, but if you want, you can take a screenshot. The call to action is to call the chairman of the Labor Commerce Committee and the vice chair, that's Joanne Ward, and the vice chair, Rip Sullivan, and ask them to please put it on the docket. Please put it on the agenda for the committee to discuss, and urge them to send it to the floor for full discussion, and that it can be sent over to the Senate for further discussion and hopefully adoption. So that's the call to action for the Green New Deal. Next slide. So we have our own call to action. And this call to action is to support our Loudoun Climate Project's Polar Plunge. So while this would be Loudoun Climate Project's first Polar Plunge and Mackenzie's first, this will be Tony's 15th and Natalie's 8th. It will be the first ever virtual national plunge. Bill McKibben and Reverend Lennox Yearwood will be featured in the program. Now, I noticed too that Delegate Rasoul's chief of staff has entered the room. Lily, are you in the room? And let me unmute you. Can you unmute yourself? Let's see. Oh. No, I thought I saw her come into the room, but I don't see her in the room. Oh, there she is. So Lily, please unmute yourself.
Hey, how are you doing, Natalie?
Good, Lily. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Happy to be here. Sam's running a couple of minutes late, but he is going to be in here in just a moment.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So Chris, maybe you could go back to the previous slide. Yeah, there we go. So this is what we thought would be an appropriate call to action for Sam. Get the bills docketed. Is that accurate, Lily?
Yeah, definitely. That's the next big thing that we need to do. We need to get them docketed, and both of those two delegates would be part of that charge. I mean, I think that you all did a lot of work to get it sent to committee too. I know that I saw a lot of messages going to the speaker, and that was pretty awesome. And so now it's sent to committee, and so we're hoping that they're going to docket it since they did send it to committee. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Virginians need to take the next step to get it docketed. Okay. So as Lily said, you know, we have a lot of power, and we want our legislators to know that we're watching and that we have certain expectations and that they need to do their job and act on the voices of Virginia citizens. So please make sure you do that, because crossover is Friday. That doesn't leave a lot of time.
Yeah, so crossover is not this Friday, but the following Friday.
Oh, it's the following Friday, okay.
Mm-hmm. But it still means it's a pretty quick process that we have to get through in order to get it through to the floor and over to the other side. So.
Okay, great.
So did you all have a chance to already kind of go over the Green New Deal, or I could probably start that while we're waiting?
Yeah, if we could. So Chris, let's go back to the previous slide. There we go.
I've been having a little trouble with my slides here.
Wow, that's fine. Yeah, there we go, sorry. Okay, so in general, so my name's Lily. I'm with Delegate Sam Rasoul's office. I'm his chief of staff. I've been with him for, I guess 4 years now. And so over the past couple of years, we've worked with the Green New Deal Virginia to put in the Green New Deal Act. And over this past year, a lot of groups came together to really try to work on the Green New Deal structure and form a better bill than we had last year. I think that the big thing that changed this year is, we still kept with the really aggressive energy parts as far as being all fossil fuels by 2036 and having a moratorium. But the big thing is that this one adds in ratepayer protections and kind of fixes some of the issues we saw happening last year in the legislative session around green and clean energy in general. So it really hones in on the accounting, and I'm not going to go into the nuts and bolts of that because Sam definitely loves kind of bringing and going through that part. The other part is that this ensures that we have a good transition for fossil fuel workers and fossil fuel communities and EJ communities. And that includes transitioning workers. So anybody who, oh, did I hear Sam hop in?
I'm right here.
Oh, hello, welcome. We were just starting into going over the Green New Deal Act and some of the differences from last year.
Yes, well, you're doing great. I don't know why you need me.
Yep.
You're doing great. Hello, everyone. That sounds good. Would you like me to pick up, or you want to continue?
No, you like. Take it over. I think that they would want to hear from you.
Okay, great. Well, you have a wonderful group this evening. Hello, Natalie. Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Great to see a lot of awesome friends in the crowd tonight. And we are excited that through your work, I guess we'll call it progress, the bill, which was maybe not going to be sent to committee, has now been sent to committee, which is one step closer, the Green New Deal Act, to being heard for sure. But it is awesome. And then for a couple of the newer people, newer faces, I'm in Delegate Sam Rasoul out of the Roanoke area in my 8th year in the General Assembly. We founded the Green New Deal coalition over a couple of years ago and have been pushing forward with pieces of legislation. This is the capstone legislation, Green New Deal Act, as many of you know. Is this whose slide is this? Is this your slide, Lily, or is this Natalie's slide?
Natalie's slide.
It's fine. So we don't have to use it. We can just focus on you. We can do speaker view, Chris, and then, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of group this is. Do you guys like to like dork out on stuff? Because I was going to, I could pull up the bill and go through it, which was part of my initial plan. Maybe we can be oh, I got a please. Okay, great. So if it's okay, if you would give me permission to share my screen, then I will just kind of take you through high level. It's kind of a longer bill, but we'll do I'll try to just zip on through it and then answer any questions that you have, if that sounds like a good deal.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I'm going to make you co-host, Sam.
Okay.
Okay, you're a co-host. Take it over.
Okay, great. So I think you got some of the highlights, and then I'm going to share this bill. One reason why I like to do this is it is a little bit wonky, but it also is great practice to just kind of understand what these things look like, how to read them, these things, bills, and in the General Assembly. So we've got House Bill 1937, as you see here, and when it was offered, and that I am the patron, and you see all these other co-patrons that are also supportive of the Green New Deal right now. We hope that we will get more support, but that will be up to you all and lobbying a bunch of folks for us. So we'll just kind of go through a couple of the major pieces. So when you look at a bill, everything that's in regular font is already the law. So in this code section, you can look it up and you can see the law. Then whatever is, for example, stricken and italicized, this is new proposed language to change the code. And that's what we're doing here. So this first change that you see is, for example, develop and make to each state agency training modules designed to facilitate the promotion of environmental justice. And so that's what you can see there. So all of this that you're seeing, a lot of it is law, but you got to look hard for a couple of the italicized pieces. So what you'll see, if my cursor will work here, that this changes some of the allotments of some of the funds that are coming out of RGGI. I was not a fan of RGGI and actually voted against it, and happy to talk about that. But what we're doing here is saying if these funds are coming in, we're going to make sure that more of those funds are spent to improve the lives of environmental justice communities. Here we get into some of the core of the Green New Deal Act, where it has the RPS, the clean energy mandates, most important of which is by 2036, we are at 100%. Also talks about what some of these definitions are. Another important piece is the fossil fuel moratorium that is listed here, but that beginning January 1, 2022, we will have that moratorium in place. It talks about how the director of DMME shall be in charge of creating and overseeing this comprehensive climate action plan. And so it talks about some of the pieces of this climate action plan. Let me see if I can also, will it help if I zoom in a little bit? Is that a little bit better? Here we go.
Yeah, better.
Okay, great. Then this is a very important piece, the energy efficiency standard, significantly bumped up to 2.4% per year. So this is probably the top way that we can, the top quickest way that we can have an imprint on our carbon is trying to improve our energy efficiency. Right now, we know our utilities are dismal in their energy efficiency goals that they try to reach. There's a large section that you see down here around transitioning workers and a fund that is created to help the transition of those workers, certain environmental justice programs. Now, these environmental justice programs are important and to pick out. So what it's mandating is that there's a certain percentage of funds that are invested into clean energy and funds that are invested into the worker base that must be directly tied into these environmental justice communities. Now, what's the whole point of the Green New Deal? I think we're all on the same page, but the reason why the Clean Economy Act was what I call unethical in its approach was because it exacerbated income inequality. And the Green New Deal uses our approach to the climate crisis in an urgent way to economically uplift those vulnerable communities that need us, those environmental justice communities, in a socially just way. So it's truly that intersection that we continue to talk about. I know many of you, that's where your heart is. And so, but as a reminder, that's where we're at. So that's a lot of what you saw up here is parts of the old Green New Deal Act. And now you're getting into large parts of the bill that are already law. So you're going to be reading and looking, but you got to look hard for the italicized portions or something that's stricken to see, you know, what's actually new language, because these sections of code, as you can imagine, Dominion has made them very, very complicated because it covers their accounting, things that they're allowed to do and not do. And it's many, many years of healthy manipulation of the code to make sure that they get what they want. And so you begin to look, and we're going down, looking for the next portions that we are changing. And then I can explain some of that to you as, okay, so this is an important piece right here, line 853 through 857. And it's really, really dorky, but really important. To simplify it, it's accounting manipulation. Right now, Dominion steals billions from you because they're able to manipulate their accounting. One of the biggest ways they do that is every new project, they just kind of add it onto the bill, you know? And so we have one of the highest bills in America, electric bills in America, because they keep adding things on. And they don't actually do the calculation that they're supposed to do to make sure that they're charging you correctly. So that is accounting manipulation. And so what this does is make sure that every time there's a new big project, that they got to do a recalculation and make sure that they are not stealing money from you. And that's what this does. And this is basically saying, notwithstanding any other provisions of this subdivision or provision of these other sections or any other provision of law. So what does that mean? Doesn't matter what anything else says. You can't manipulate your accounting anymore the way you've been doing and stealing this money. Because all costs associated with the construction, acquisition, etc., you know, must be accounted for through what you call your base rates and not through these racks, these additional charges that they keep adding. So that's one big addition, is we wanted to really get at their terrible approach to how they fund a lot of this. And don't worry, I'm gonna try not to put y'all to sleep. Hang in there. I told you it was gonna be wonky, but now you can say, you know, you've seen it with your own eyes. All right, and we're getting there. All right, so we're in a new section now. And this section, let me show you. So this is a kind of catch-all. So you saw the fossil fuel moratorium piece at the top. Okay, So you have the new fossil fuel moratorium infrastructure piece that is at the very top. And what we have right now is there are some windows there where you might have heard that there are like these new plants that they are planning to build that also have a large footprint. Some of these new plants, gas-fired plants, and some others, what this is saying that immediately, beyond the moratorium, immediately, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the commission shall not, SCC shall not approve construction of any new utility-owned generating facilities that emit carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So any of these other, you've heard of the one in Charles, you've heard the one in different spots, all that stuff needs to immediately cease, and no new permits beyond the January 1, 2022 cessation that must occur. So we get rid of all this RPS language, and we just say, you can see it right here, 2036 and thereafter, we're at 100%. So before it was 2045, we're at 100%. And that was at 100% of their clean energy, which is a bit manipulated. This is 100% of our definition. As we move on, let me get here, page 23, we're getting there. Should be some music to this. Maybe Chris can sing for us as we're moving along. All right. Almost there. One or two other little pieces. And that way so energy efficiency. So we changed and streamlined the definition of environmental justice communities right here. Here's the breakout. I mentioned to you the energy efficiency. This is actually where Dominion had put it in place. You kind of see how big of a difference there is, a 0.5 to 2.4, just a massive difference in what our goals should be in our energy efficiency standards. And we're getting close to the end, changing some 2040s to 2036. And then the Commonwealth Energy Policy, the 2036 has changed. The Virginia Energy Plan goes through and changes some of that. So we have this energy plan where we talk about a variety of things, and that's it. So that is the bill. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. You all did great. Not too many cameras went off. I can't tell if you're cursing at me because y'all are on mute. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have about HB 1937, and just as important, like calls to action, what next steps we want to take.
If you want to ask a question, there is one in the chat. Mm-hmm. And
okay.
I got it out for you. Where is it? The question was, why has it been so hard to get these bills on the docket? That was from Sam Carlson.
Well, I'm going to let you use your imagination, Sam. There are a lot of interests who are not excited, from one Sam to another, who are not excited about our work. And if we think that this is a Democrat and Republican thing, let's think again, because that is not the case. So look, there were some good provisions that of the Clean Economy Act from the environmental pieces that we were certainly coming back and trying to build on, but certainly in a more progressive way. And this, takes a direct slap at Dominion with our Green New Deal Act, HB 1937 this year. James Dickey talks about, asks any provision for further incentives for consumer generation of clean energy, subsidies, tax incentives, etc. That is not integrated into the Green New Deal Act. However, there are several pieces of legislation. I will tell you a lot of legislation that was planned for this year just did not get introduced because of COVID. We had this radical reduction to 7 bills, which is, made us have to try very hard to figure out what we were going to prioritize. But clearly, when we say incentives, one of the biggest problems that we had in the past was things like net metering, other big roadblocks that we had fundamentally in the way. And fortunately, we have made some progress with some of the work of lots of good organizations who have pushed for sure. I see many things coming in the chat, but if somebody wants to unmute and ask, we can certainly be conversational. And I'm happy to make sure that I get to as many of these as I can. I will do my best, my friends.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Alice Crow, and I live in Woodbridge in Prince William County, and I work with Tiziana Bottino on climate action stuff and also plastics. The moratorium on new facilities, you said any new plants that emits, did you mean to say CO2 or carbon dioxide?
That language. So there's two pieces to the bill that kind of hit the infrastructure. The larger piece is just a fossil fuel infrastructure moratorium across the board, which begins January 1, 2022. So you won't have any new fossil fuel infrastructure, period. Now, what happens immediately is, as you might know, that there are a number of different plants that are online, that are in the pipeline to potentially be built, and there was specific language inserted to tell the SEC not to grant any new permits for any plant that would, as a byproduct, emit carbon dioxide.
Okay, so I assume then that would include petrochemical facilities that are cranking out millions and millions and millions of tons of plastic that are ending up in the oceans and in our seafood. It would include petrochemical facilities, because the fossil fuel industry now is looking to plastics as their future, because there's not as much demand for the combustion of fossil fuel, gasoline, and so forth, because of efforts of people like you and all the people on this call. And so they want to build, and they are in the process of building over 300 new petrochemical facilities to crank out more and more plastic and to sell them to third world countries. And of course, in our country here, they manufacture the demand. So I just wanted to make sure that it would include a petrochemicals facility that emits carbon dioxide, any new ones in the state.
That is not included depending on the scope of activities. So I just want to be, so first of all, I 100% agree with you, and we're certainly on the same page. I just want to be very direct about my understanding on what my bill has in it. So that way we know where there's other work to be done.
Right.
What it specifically talks about is utility-owned generating facility that emits carbon dioxide. So just depending on exactly who it is and who's setting it up, I think that my bill probably doesn't cover everything that we need to cover based upon our conversation right now, so that there's also some more work to be done there, in my humble opinion. Thank you, Alice, for that.
Another question from the group.
Let's see. I've got several in the chat. I'll try to just run through them. But if somebody has a question to ask live, happy to take that as well. How does this compare to things like Biden's climate agenda, Paris Climate Agreement? I would say that it's almost, like apples and oranges. I think that the Paris Climate Agreement is, let's say, like the kind of the bare minimum that we should be doing as a collective, in my opinion, as a collective world community, coming to some basic understandings. One of the best things about being in this type of agreement is if you can build in certain enforcement mechanisms and try to hold the top polluters like the United States, China, and some others in check. And so, for us, the Green New Deal Act at the state level, and then of course, our champions like AOC and some others who are pushing a much broader plan, because you can at the federal level, which would include job guarantees, pushing forward with more robust like transportation plans, just pieces that can be funded robustly at the federal level, would be a little bit different. A lot of the initial signals that the Biden administration has sent in our field at this moment have been pretty good. I've been pleasantly surprised, but the bar was so low because of the guy who just left that we were just so anxious to stop the bleeding. And hats off to him because you gotta call it like it is. Hats off to Biden for canceling Keystone, for going to Congresswoman Haddad and bringing her into the Interior, for I think bringing some really strong people on the environment into his administration. The question will be, in the end, what happens with the kind of stronger neoliberal interests that will put a lot of pressure on the administration. So we hope we can work well, and I'm of course wishing the Biden administration all the best. But I know we will all try to keep each other accountable as we move forward. Tiziana asks, once I'm elected Lieutenant Governor, I like the positivity there. Will you be able to influence those efforts in that position in case the bill won't make it this cycle? Yeah, so for sure, I'll continue to push. And there's trade-offs, as Lieutenant Governor, I'm not as involved in the intricacies of creating each bill as I am right now. As you can see, I'm kind of a dork like that, but I have a different platform with which to elevate issues, which to me is something that will take very seriously. And one thing that I really love doing is not just, how can I bring up the left flank? What I really want to do is I have these progressive feelings about things, and I want to figure out how I can frame it in such a way to bring a broad coalition of folks and say, hey, yeah, that makes sense, and to me, that's really important, because it's not enough to be right. We got to bring people along for sure. Let me see. There was a bill, so Monica asks, lots of great questions. And again, anyone who wants to ask your question live, feel free. It's okay, everybody. We can smile tonight. There was a bill introduced this year to reduce Dominion's influence in Virginia politics. So unfortunately, Monica, I have bad news. I was on the subcommittee last week when that bill, which would ban contributions. So my campaign for Lieutenant Governor is 100% funded by individuals, period. No corporations, no PACs, no nothing. So that's where I really want to, well, what I really want is for all of our campaigns to be publicly funded. That's the ideal situation. But sadly, that bill, there were two of them. One was all corporations, and one was public service corporations by Delegate Sumaira and Delegate Lee Carter. Sadly, both of those met their fate in the subcommittee that I sit on. Even though it was Democratic majority, it did not go well. So not that they're completely gone, but it's just hasn't been something that either side has taken very seriously, campaign finance reform. And it will help. I don't care what anybody says. it helps. It changes conversations when, you know, Dominion is busy filling the coffers of folks. You know, by the way, I'm not talking about anybody in particular, but I am saying there's a correlation here. They give millions and they get whatever they want and they steal billions. So you can piece that together however you want. That's just the truth that's got to be told. So thank you for that question, Monica, and we'll keep fighting for sure. Yeah, Tiziana. Yeah, I have seen some good things coming out of the Biden administration thus far. I'm hoping that you know, it won't be stifled too much. You know, when you've got the trifecta. Look, this is what I remember. Take yourself back to 2008 and then 2009. And in the beginning of 2009, we had the trifecta at the federal level. And we didn't stand boldly for what we believe in and our values. And we were constantly on our heels, and we didn't come to the American people and say, listen, we have a vision for improving your lives. And that means we're going to make some changes. Some of them might be a tiny bit scary, but we're going to do it together. We're going to try to make sure that nobody's left behind. Here's some things around healthcare, around wages, so on and so forth. And what we did is just kind of, you know, tried to play defense, build a fort. And then we had the 2010 big wave, the Tea Party wave. Everybody remembers that, right? And then what the heck did we do in 2013 going into 2014? President Obama passes Obamacare, reduces the number of uninsured by 25%, and we did everything we could to run away from it as fast as we could. All of the Senate candidates ran away from it, and we lost the Senate in 2014. And here you are. We have Supreme Court Supreme Court justices who have been unjustly put in because we ran away from Obamacare. Look, the bottom line is be bold about what you want to stand for, have a pragmatic conversation with folks about how you're going to get there, keep reassuring them, bring them along. Don't be too self-righteous about it, but let them know how our progressive values can help them, and try to make sure that we make space for lots of conversations. So that's my philosophy in general with regards to a lot of this. And I'm hoping that now we got the trifecta at the federal level, that some heads will prevail and say, hey, there's some good stuff here that we should be pushing for. Any questions from this?
I hope this isn't too far off topic, but I'm really interested in the discussion around why that legislation failed to keep Dominion out of politics. I know that they give to both parties. Can you give a little more insight into what you think it would take to change that equation?
Well, let me say, I'm going to say this as optimistic as I can. Fortunately, a new entity, maybe called Clean Virginia, some of you might have heard over the past couple of years, has said we're going to fight big money from Dominion with big money from not Dominion, and with no other agenda other than what I have seen is everything's been very positive. We're, you know, protecting ratepayers and pushing for clean energy. This entity is, it's heavily funded by one wealthier gentleman who seems pretty altruistic in what he's doing out of the Charlottesville area. And I think that it certainly helped to shift the conversation some, for sure. You know, the reality is if you go and talk to the average voter about campaign finance reform, it is just not high on the list. So what you have to do is find out what is high on their list and figure out why the lack of campaign finance reform is standing in their way. And so the talk of good government, the talk of campaign finance reform doesn't move the needle too much. But when we, you know, people are pretty pissed off at the pharmaceutical industry for what they're doing and manipulating drug prices and making sure things are not accessible. The pharmacy benefit managers who, there's just a veil over us even understanding the pricing behind all of this. And, and so you see the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical benefit managers, certain providers, just kind of put a lot of money, push back, and you'll have lots of people who can empathize with that or sympathize with that. And you can say, well, the big reason why there's a frustration here is it's just too much money. We got to put a stop to it. And that may mean, quite frankly, building bipartisan coalitions, people across the spectrum who are like, you know what, we gotta stop this, because the monopolistic tendencies are really, what kill us. To be a really big dork for a moment. Okay, well, I'll start in 1929. The stock market crash. FDR said, New Deal, right? We're going to push forward with New Deal projects, these big investments to uplift and bring people out of this rut. But the original conservative response to that was that the 29 crash happened because of monopolies, because barons came in for decades and were manipulating markets, manipulating the situation just for their wealth. And so conservatives would say, man, this New Deal is just government overreach, too much spending. We have to do everything we can to make sure monopolies do not exist anymore. That is the modern conservative theory in economics. And so you find some of these Republicans who still hold on to some of this. And they believe that it is, if you dig down deep, it is, wrong fundamentally for this kind of monopolistic power like dominion that they have. And that's where you got to find those kind of coalitions with people who may seem unlikely.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. We certainly learned a lot. We learned how to read a bill in its original language. And I think we're going to have to close it. I want to thank you so much to everybody who attended the meeting, our special guests and our special guest speaker, and Lily for attending. And we had some people from Loudoun County government as well. So thank you for joining. You're going to get a follow-up email with links to the calls to action. And we hope to see you again at our next Loudoun Climate Project meeting and Climate Talk. This is a series. So my last question to you is this an ending or a prelude to a new beginning?